Welcome back to the channel and to the second part of the 40k Crusade list project, the Space Wolves project. If you haven't seen the first episode, you can check it out on the YouTube channel. Otherwise, let's get into what's been happening since I last made a video. I guess first off, just an update on how we've gone with our Crusade. We've only actually played one game since the last video. That was a Deathwatch versus Tyranids game. It's actually the first time we've seen Deathwatch used in our Crusade list, in our Crusade campaign. I was looking for something different to try out. I know that Deathwatch aren't doing very well in the meta at the moment, but by the same token, Tyranids are a long way from having had a codex in 8th edition, and so are probably a bit struggling too. I know it's probably a bit, not one-sided, but certainly taking Deathwatch with the benefits they get versus Xenos armies. I wasn't planning to do that. I just sort of make up a Deathwatch army, and happened to be that my opponent bought Tyranids that day. So interesting game. I thought in the first round I was going to lose playing Deathwatch because I pretty much lost my kill team in the first round, which was just a regular is it Fortis kill team or whatever the standard kill team of non-Primaris Marines is. But between my Librarian and my aggressors and my Dreadnought, I was able to wipe out the Tyranids in 2 turns for no further losses. So yeah, obviously Marines are still in a good spot. Even Deathwatch, where they're at, do well. I think probably one of the things that was a big advantage is that Deathwatch get to choose a single type of battlefield role. So either troops or elites or heavy support, for example, and they get to re-roll. Well, they get a benefit against that. I think against all Xenos they can re-roll rune rolls of 1, but they get some other benefit. In any case, Mike, my opponent, had troops that were Gene Stealers, troops that were Gaunts, troops that were Tyranid Warriors. So it was an easy choice to focus on troops, and I had that advantage against basically 3/4 of his army. So yeah, it was still a fun game. Probably not so much for the person that lost. I didn't expect to win, and I managed to turn it around. So that's what we're up to with our Crusade campaign. But as yet, my Crusade group is still completely unaware of my Space War project. And I'm sure that when they find out, they will certainly mock me for it as well, because I've made no secret in the past about my disdain for Space Wolves. Anyway, so how have I been going? So first off, I have now purchased and built everything. That's the main thing. So I went through here. Some items I managed to get from third-party retailers. There's a particular third-party retailer in my area that is 15% off Games Workshop prices. I could have actually bought more from there, but I do like to support my local Games Workshop store. So I bought in-store what they had in stock, and the rest I bought from the third-party retailer, except for the fact that I managed to find an unopened, unused copy of the Space Wolves Talons of Morkai Battle Force from 2019 on Warhammer Buy Swap Sell on Facebook, which I got for 200 Australian dollars. So dividing out, they made the Space Wolves Wolfen and the Primaris upgrade pack a lot cheaper. And I've now got was it a Storm Wolf or whatever it's called, the flyer, and I've got the Tech Priest equivalent, and I've got some more intercessors I can easily build, but they can all sit there until I decide to add them to the list if I do. But I managed to get everything I needed to put it together, and then I set off building the models, trying to convert where I could to try and make sure I really captured the Space Wolf aesthetic. So let's see what I put together. First off, we've got the Space Marine Captain, or Wolf Lord. So this particular model, I wanted to have a Smash Captain. I never actually owned and operated the Smash Captain in 40k before. I'm probably an edition too late. Smash Captains were all the rage in 8th edition. In 9th edition, they're not as fantastic, but I decided to do it anyway. We're going for a really melee-heavy list here. So I actually wanted to I used the legs from a Space Marine Vanguard veteran. Same thing with the jump pack. All the jump packs in the Vanguard veteran box have various embellishments on them, like Aquillas or skulls. I didn't want to use the Aquila because I don't see many times that the Space Wolves wear typical Space Marine iconography. So I chose a jump pack that had, I think, just skulls instead. Then the body and back came from a Grey Hunters box set, as did the shield and the hammer. I wasn't 100% happy with how this model went together, mainly because the Thunder Hammer is designed to be sort of rested over the Marine's shoulder, which obviously can't happen when you've got a jump pack there. So I had to sort of lower it, which means it does sort of come across his body slightly. It's going to be fun to paint when I try in there behind the shield, behind the hammer. Look, I think it'll still look all right. And if I'm not happy with it, I might cut it off at the hand and just rotate the wrist and re-glue it just to get the Thunder Hammer sort of out of the way a bit more. But overall, I'm happy with the model. Let's just see. In terms of the character itself in Crusade rules, I put in 2 requisition points to give him both a Warlord trait, being Hunter, which gives him +1 to advance and charge, and also he can now charge even after falling back or advancing. So it gets him into combat a lot quicker. So he's got his 12-inch move with a jump pack plus 1d6 plus 1 advance plus 2d6 plus 1 charge. Gives him a decent threat range even on turn 1. And then for the relic, I gave him Pelt of the Beowulf, which means that when he does get into melee, any attacks back against him are at -1 to hit and -1 to wound. So I just wanted to keep him a bit more survivable in melee combat so he can stay in there and do damage over a couple of rounds. So, yeah, nice model to build. Looking forward to getting him on the table, though probably I've found that it's definitely helpful to have a Librarian, which means I'll probably start with a Librarian in the first game or so and bring in the Wolf Lord at a later point. His Warlord trait Hunter has a Saga attached to it, which I think gives an aura of charging after advancing. So probably once he activates that, I'll take the requisition that will allow him to have that every game at the start of the game as well. All right, moving on to the Librarian or Rune Priest. Uh, Once again, a bit of a mishmash of a model here. So I didn't want to work with resin, so I didn't want to buy the official Rune Priest kit. So instead, I bought the Space Marine Librarian kit, which actually has a 4 staff. And I swapped out a lot of bits. So the arms have both come from the Grey Hunters box set. So he's got a plasma pistol in one hand. The sword in the other, I'm counting as a force sword. It's just got some runes carved into it as well, which looks quite nice. The backpack came from the old school Space Wolves upgrade kit. The head came from Grey Hunters box set. So yeah, overall putting it together. Now, I really agonized about what to do with his base because out of the box or out of the blister pack, he comes with a 25mm base. And the base is actually molded detail that the feet sit onto. So the feet don't sit evenly on a flat surface. They 1 foot slightly raised because of the molded base he sits on. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with him at first because I didn't like the idea of having a single 25mm model Space Marine in amongst all the other 32mm models. And I was looking up, and most tournaments for the Librarian will accept him on either a 25mm or a 32mm base. Not that I plan to take this to tournaments. I just wanted to see, did the populace allow for base conversion on a Space Marine Librarian, and they generally do. So I decided to use a 32mm base, but what I did was I took the 25mm base, I cut off the rim of the base, and then I glued it down onto a 32mm base I had spare. It does sit up slightly because the bottom of the regular base projects down below the edge of the rim. And I did sand it down a bit, but what I'm going to do is when I actually base the model during painting, I'm going to use texture paint to build up around that base and get rid of that lip so that the grit and sand around the base integrates nicely into the rocks the marine's standing on. If I could use green stuff as well, but I think I should be fine with just like laying on some thick texture paint and giving it plenty of time to dry. Insofar as the character is concerned, I decided not to give him a Warlord trait at this point in time. Instead, I gave him just a relic, being the Storm's Eye, which is actually a pretty powerful relic in my mind. What it means is once per turn after using a Tempestus power, which is the standard Space Wolf psychic powers. You can roll a d6 for every single enemy unit within 12 inches, and on a 4 plus, they take a mortal wound. So once again, getting him in close into combat with lots of enemy units, and then firing that off, will hopefully get at least a few extra mortal wounds on top of whatever he can dish out with his smite or living lightning. Yeah, and in terms of psychic powers, I gave him Instincts Awoken to buff other units and living lightning to throw out some mortal wounds. So that's my librarian. Next is the Blood Claws, which I built pretty vanilla. They're basically just building 5 standard Marines as you would build from the Grey Hunters pack. Here I gave the leader a Power Fist. Now the squad can have a plasma pistol, but it doesn't have to be on the squad leader. So I decided to give the plasma pistol to one of the other Marines. So all of them have chain swords except for the leader, which has a power fist, and then one of them has a plasma pistol, and the rest have bolt pistols. So pretty straightforward. 6 power level group, one more than a regular tactical squad. But when we get to the actual numbers, you'll see why they're a bit more expensive. So next up is my only Primaris entry into my force. So I did choose to use some assault intercessors. In this case, I used as the standard assault intercessor squad, and then integrated in some of the Space Wolves Primaris upgrades. So things like the head for the sergeant, the necklace he's wearing, the sculpted shoulder pads with the Wolf Company logo on them. And I think a couple of just embellishments on the back of their belts as well to make them look more Space Wolfy. Uh, with that being said, in terms of making up the Crusade rules, I decided to spend a requisition point to give them Indominus Crusade veterans. So what I'll do, I'm not going to go through all the names and backstory I did during this episode. Once I've actually painted up the models, I'll give you the detail on who they're actually going to be. But these guys are Indominus Crusade veterans, which gives them 6 experience points at the start of the Crusade campaign, which let them get a battle honor, which I gave them veteran warriors to re-roll ones to hit. So standard heavy bolt pistols and chainswords, and the sergeant has a hand flamer and a thunderhammer. All right, moving along. Next up is my long fangs. Now, I went back and forth with this unit a bit because originally I was going to give them 4 grav cannons. I had bought a Devastator pack, which comes with 2 grav cannons. I knew I had built a previous Devastator pack before, so I should have grav cannons in my bits box. But when I went back to my bits box, I found I didn't actually have those grav cannons. They might have been from an earlier Devastator set, which didn't come with grav cannons at the time, like one of the older sculpts. So I actually went out and I bought a second pack of Devastators. But then thinking about it, when I was building the models, I actually decided that I would go with 2 grav cannons and 2 multi-melters. That way, the unit's a bit more versatile. I can drop them in behind enemy lines in the future, say with a drop pod or with a strategy to give you off-board deployment. And I can then decide, based upon what my enemy's got, when I start taking hits, do I remove multi-melters first or grav cannons? Am I dealing with Marines and Terminators, or am I dealing with tanks, for example? So I decided to open that up. Now I did use the bodies of Grey Hunters, but then obviously the weapons of the Devastators and the backpacks of Devastators. So they do look once again rather Space Wolfy. I had to sort of work out how to make the weapons fit in with the various embellishments on the front of their torsos, like their fur belts, etc. And the other problem I ran into actually was when I decided to use the multi-melters, is that in the standard Space Marine Devastator kit, although it comes with 2 of each weapon, the left arm for the grav cannons is actually shared with the multi-melters. So if you build grav cannons, you can't actually build multi-melters from the same kit. I just raided my spare parts box and found some spare left arms that would fit in. But yeah, it was a bit annoying at first because there was left arms for the unique ones for the heavy bolter, unique ones for the missile launcher, unique ones for the what else is there? There's no plasma cannon there. Las cannon, that's it. Um, but yeah, in this case, just a single left arm for each grav cannon and multi-melter. But it worked out with thanks to the bits box as well. Once again, just used some heads, etc., from the Grey Hunters. Uh, Now, with the Sergeant's weapons, I did give him a Power Fist as well, but interesting enough, a standard Devastator squad gets to have a combi weapon if they choose to, whereas Long Fangs don't get that. Instead, they get a special weapon. So either like a flamer or a melter gun or a plasma gun. So I decided to give my pack leader a melter gun, which didn't come in the Devastator kit, so I only get combi weapons. So I had to go back out to my bits box and find a spare multi-melter to fit in. So it's a bit of an odd pose to have a multi-melter held out in one hand while pointing with a power fist, but there was no real way to improve that. But that's my pack leader for the Long Fangs. Moving along to the bikes now, or Swift Claws as they should be called. So with this, I actually had from Conquest magazine, I had a set of 3 bikes available to me that I hadn't. Well, I mean, I obviously paid for the magazine, but I hadn't, considered to use the bikes for anything else. Hence, you can see here the blue plastic, since everything from Conquest came in blue plastic or green if you were the Death Guard models. So what I did here is I used I used one Grey Hunter torso. The other 2 torsos are regular Space Marines, but then the weapon arms, the heads, the backpacks are all from the Space Wolves Grey Hunter set. And I think actually I used a couple of pieces from the Space Wolf upgrade set as well. So here we go. I've got 2 guys with chainswords, 1 guy with a thunderhammer. Now the sergeant of the squad can also have a combi weapon, and I decided to give him a combi melter. With that being said, I didn't think it would look right to have him thunderhammer in one hand, combi melter in the other, not actually steering the bike. So what I decided to do was I've actually gotten a combi melter model I had. I cut the hand off that was holding it, and then I had a couple of bolters that didn't have any hand holding them, so I cut off the handle and trigger guard from a regular bolter and attached it where the hand was sitting on the combi melter. And then I decided to just lay it across and stick it to the back part of the bike on the I guess the parcel shelf behind the rider. And what I'll probably do before I paint these is I'll probably get some green stuff and just make a like a leather strap holding the gun down, so that the idea is that this guy is riding with it and he can just sort of stow his thunderhammer and draw the weapon when he needs to fire it. That way, the model is really WYSIWYG. But yeah, overall, pretty easy build to do here was to get these guys. Now, I haven't actually glued the riders onto the seats, and the hands are just holding on the handlebar by friction, so I can pull the riders off when I need to paint as well. Should make life a bit easier. All right, next up is the Wolfen, and once again, a relatively vanilla unit. I just used the Wolfen boxes that came and built the models, no sort of weird conversions or mixed parts. Once again, I did go back and forth a bit on what to do with the Wolfen, whether I would have. I was considering 2 Thunderhammer and Storm Shield combinations and 2 Great Axes. Once again, using the idea of working out what I'm fighting against to where I actually allocate the wounds. But in the end, I decided that the Storm Shield benefit of the 4+ invul save is just too handy. So I gave the 4 regular guys, all of them Thunderhammers and Storm Shields. The pack leader has to have Wolf and Frost Claws. You can change the model to use other things, but that's only if you've got then a pack of 10, for example. You'd have the one pack leader with the Frost Claws, and the rest could have whatever they wanted to have. But overall, yep, handy unit to have. And finally, the Venerable Dreadnought. I really like the Venerable Dreadnought sculpt they've done for Space Wolves with the axe and storm shield, so that's why I wanted to go. Thankfully, a recent errata has corrected that you can put the heavy flamer on the shield arm of this Dreadnought. The language is a bit ubiquitous before in the book originally, and they have now fixed up through FAQs the fact that it's a viable option to put the flamer on the weapon on the shield arm. So when I built this, I didn't actually glue on the arms for this picture. They're held on there by blue tack. But I find with Dreadnoughts, I like to paint them as sub-assemblies. So I did glue the waist on, which I don't normally do, and also the armor plates on the legs. But I'm confident that I can work around that and still paint the model as I want to. This will probably be the one model I actually base coat with lead belcher rather than Mechanica Standard Grey. The rest I'll start with Mechanica Standard Grey and then go to Rust Grey from there. But with this guy, I'm going to start with lead belcher. All right, so how should these models actually perform on the table? I've done some math hammer here, and you can see how they're looking. So the captain and librarian aren't going to be huge damage dealers. The captain can kill 3.5 marines in melee or 2.5 terminators, but that's not his primary purpose. His primary purpose is obviously buffing people out, giving them the reroll ones to hit, and then when he gets his first charge off and can then buy that trait to always have his saga, he'll then be able to give other units the ability to get into melee combat as well. But he's no slouch in melee, but he's outgunned or out chopped by other units at a similar price point as well. The Blood Claws, once again, although I should also say with the captain, the only shooting he's actually got is frag and crack grenades. So hence why there's not much in terms of shooting damage there. And the Librarian, I've just limited here to the plasma pistol. The Blood Claws in melee combat, brutally effective. Killing 13.5 guardsmen, 5.5 marines, 2.5 terminators, and dealing 5 wounds on a Leman Russ. They are 6 power level, so they're more than a intercessor squad or tactical squad. But overall, I think a very effective melee unit. With that being said, after the buff, I was able to give the assault intercessors with the Indominus Crusade veterans. That's actually pushed them even higher than the Blood Claws at only 5 power level to killing 15.5 guard. Once again, 5.5 marines, 3.5 terminators, and dealing almost 7 wounds to a Leman Russ. So I think that initially the assault intercessors will probably find a very common place in the Crusade list, having such an effective output of damage for only 5 power level. We'll see how they go. They're both sides are just as tanky as the other. It's more a case of who can put out the most damage. And the assault intercessors right now, with their reroll ones to hit, thanks to veteran warriors, are looking really good. The long fangs, whether or not I take these will depend heavily on what I'm playing against. Whether I think my opponent might have an armored force, or at least lots of mechs and techs, because by having that sort of split 2 grav cannon, 2 multi melters, they're not going to wipe a Leman Russ in one turn. They can certainly do half its or more than half its wounds in one turn, but they've also got the grav cannons there, which are more used for anti-heavy infantry. So still killing 6 marines, 3 terminators, but just not having the same effect you would have if you had 4 grav cannons. But I still needed to have the versatility when they come in at so expensive, I think 7 power level. The bike squad, another 5 power level unit. Once again, more suited to melee. They can do quite a bit with that combi melter and all their twin bolters as well, but they're not going to do more than a couple of wounds on Leman Russ, or maybe kill a marine or maybe 2. Same with the Terminator. So their specialty is melee, but by the same token, they do about half the damage that the assault intercessors do for the same power level. It just comes down to their speed. They can move around the board faster. They can grab objectives. And of course, one of the really big things about 9th edition is whichever side can bully the middle and take and hold the objectives is usually going to win the game, even if they're tabled. They'll get enough points to be able to stay in the game. The Wolfen, the most brutal unit when it comes to melee combat. They can almost kill 2 Leman Russes in a single melee phase, dealing at 25 wounds on a tough state vehicle, plus killing 17 guard, an entire squad of Marines, almost an entire squad of Terminators. They're brutal, but at 8 power level, they're a distraction card effects. People are going to shoot at them. They've got those 4+ invulnerable saves, but only I think a 3+ regular save, because I think they're a regular 4+, and the Storm Shield brings into a 3+ regular save, not 3+ base like other Marines. And they also can't do other things. They can't do actions, for example, because they're so rapidly mad. But I think that when I get those on the table, they will do some real damage. And finally, the Venerable Dreadnought. So its shooting here comes exclusively from its heavy flamer. So really more suited to killing hordes of guard rather than anything else. But its strength is getting into melee combat. Once again, it can destroy a Leman Russ in a single turn. Should be able to handle most vehicles. Can do quite a bit of damage to Marines and Terminators, but at the same power level as the Wolfen. Um, I guess what it really has is the durability of the 8 wounds, reducing damage by 1 thanks to Duty Eternal. So yeah, I guess it'll be a tough choice when it comes to it, whether I put the Wolfen or the Venerable Dreadnought on the table. Starting at 25 power level games, I really can't do both because both would be 16 power level, which only leaves 9 power level for a character and a troops choice, which you could do if you had a lieutenant and just a regular intercessor squad or a solid intercessor squad, but you're building your army around those 2 big units then, which will draw a lot of fire. So I think starting off, I'll probably go with like the Librarian, maybe the assault intercessors, the bikes, and either the Wolfen or the Dreadnought. I'll work it out for the first game, but yeah, that's what we're looking at. So everything's built, everything's ready to go, which means that the next step is going to be painting them up. And that'll probably be the longest step. I would expect not to hear much from me on this channel for a bit of time while I get this all sorted out, but rest assured, once they're all painted, there'll be another show where I will show you the finalized models. I will tell you about their backstories. And then finally, the next show after that will be me talking about how they performed on the table, and probably also my friends' reactions to the fact that I've put Space Wolves on the table, having been so against them for so long. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the second episode of this little experiment. Please do leave any comments you like. In future videos, I'll be asking about what units people think I should include in the Crusade list next. But for now, I was going to focus on this initial set, and we'll go from there. But please do comment if you have any thoughts about it. Otherwise, I will see you when I'm back with a painted army.